Ask most people when history started in the Santa Clarita Valley. Maybe they'll mention the first discovery of gold in the 1800s, or oil production, or the coming of the railroad. But the truth is, Santa Clarita Valley history started way before that. I'm Leon Warden, and this is Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History, brought to you by the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society, the SCV School and Business Alliance, and Valencia Bank and Trust. There aren't a whole lot of experts on the subject of the Santa Clarita Valley's earliest residents, the people who lived here before Spanish conquest. But one of the experts is with us tonight. He's the curator of anthropology at the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, Dr. John Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Johnson, when did people first arrive in the Santa Clarita Valley?
Well, we wish we knew. We have evidence of people near the Santa Clarita Valley about 13,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that evidence comes from the Channel Islands. We have a site out on Santa Rosa Island that has recently been radiocarbon dated at 13,000 years ago. And we also have evidence of people about that time in the western Mojave Desert, just over the mountains from us, and also about the same time in the San Joaquin Valley. So if they're in those areas, they're probably here too.
Now, do we know who those people were?
We don't know what language they were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know very much about them at all. We only have one human skeleton from that time period anywhere in California, and that's from the site out on Santa Rosa Island.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been an effort to get DNA from a small sample from that skeleton, but other than that, we don't have a lot of information to go by.
Well, from 13,000 years ago, how would those people have arrived here? Where would they have come from?
There are several theories about how people arrived in North America.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I feel has the most likelihood of being correct is the one that involves people migrating down the Pacific coast from Siberia.
Right.
Because when we go back to 13,000 years ago, and a little earlier, Siberia was still connected to the North American continent through the so-called land bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And the sea level was a lot lower than it is today, maybe as much as 400 feet lower at the glacial maximum during the Ice Age. And so when the sea level was a lot lower, people could have come along the margins of the glaciers, and as they retreated, as things warmed up, and then arrived along the west coast of North America.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that you personally have developed a particular expertise and interest in the Native Americans in our area here in the Santa Clarita Valley and environs, and yet you're at Santa Barbara. What sparked your interest in the Indians locally here?
Well, several reasons. My earliest interest dates back a little over 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked for the Forest Service, I was doing archaeological field work for Los Padres National Forest.
Right.
And we were putting together a overview of this part of the forest, and I began to get interested about who were the native people that lived in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got interested in the Indians we know today as the Tataviam Indians.
Is that the correct pronunciation, Tataviam? I think most people around here, not knowing any better, usually say Tataviam or...
I think Tataviam would be more accurate than Tataviam.
How do we know that? What do we know about their language?
We only know about 20 words and phrases in their language. It was a very small group that was living here in terms of a speech community. There were only 1,000 people, or maybe less than that were living in the Santa Clarita area. But we know they had a distinctive language because the missionaries said so.
Mm-hmm.
They said their language was distinct from that spoken in the San Fernando Valley and different from the Chumash languages. And we have enough of a vocabulary that was written down that we can compare it to other languages. And the Tataviam language, we believe, was related to the language spoken in the Los Angeles area in the San Fernando Valley. That language is called Gabrielino.
Mm-hmm.
There's another language spoken in the Antelope Valley, which is called Vanyame. And Vanyame and Gabrielino and Tataviam all belong to a group of languages we call Takic.
Mm-hmm.
And Takic languages, in turn, belong to a larger superfamily called Uto-Aztecan.
Right.
That includes all the languages of the Great Basin and all the languages spoken through the American Southwest down all the way to the Valley of Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
with the Nahuatl language spoken by the Aztecs.
So there aren't any more people who, any more native speakers of Tataviam?
No, as far as we can tell, the last native Tataviam speaker probably died about 1911 or 1912.
What about that Juan Jose Fustero we hear a lot about? He died in 1921, according to his death records.
Right.
Was he the last full-blooded Tataviam?
Fustero was a full-blooded Indian of Tataviam ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
His mother was probably the last speaker, Fustero's mother.
Okay.
Fustero himself spoke as his native language, the language we call Katanamuk,
Mm-hmm.
which was spoken in the Tehachapi Mountains,
Okay.
which his mother also apparently spoke, and that was her preferred language. But both his mother and father were partly of Tataviam ancestry.
Right. Are those Tataviam the same people who arrived here in, 13,000 years ago?
Probably not. As near as we can tell, speakers of Uto-Aztecan languages were present in the Central Valley of California prehistorically.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, they were replaced in the Central Valley of California by the Indians we know as Yokuts Indians.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that people speaking Uto-Aztecan languages moved out of the San Joaquin Valley region and spread into the parts of Southern California, and then in also to Arizona and New Mexico, the Great Basin,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there down into Mexico. And so Tataviam may be a kind of a little isolate pocket of an archaic form of Uto-Aztecan languages.
Okay. The reason I ask is that a number that we often bandy about is 450 AD, as far as the arrival, quote unquote, of the Tataviam. Where do we get that idea?
Well, it comes from the thought that the Uto-Aztecan languages did have to spread out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people have said that maybe around 500 AD would have been a time when they would have been spreading.
Mm-hmm.
That's about the same time as the introduction of the bow and arrow in the archaeological record. And
Mm-hmm.
so with the introduction of the bow and arrow, that would have given some groups a advantage if they were undergoing a population spread and moving into a new area over people who were already living there.
Mm-hmm.
And linking those two ideas together, this bow and arrow giving these people more of an advantage in dominating their neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
would maybe also correlated with changes in languages.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no real evidence that says when people arrived here speaking a Uto-Aztecan language. It could have been earlier. We just don't know.
I remember that back in the 70s, and I think we stopped doing it sometime in the 80s, we used to call the native people here Aliklik. Where does that name come from? Is that the same? Are we talking about the same people?
Yes, the name Aliklik is the name for these people in the Chumash languages.
Okay.
The Chumash Indians called the people of the Santa Clarita Valley the Aliklik. Aliklik in Chumash means something like the people who stammer a lot or people who stutter a lot. Because
So it's a derogatory, Aliklik is a derogatory name for the Tataviam then.
right, to the Chumash, the Tataviam, when they talked, their language sounded to them like they were stuttering.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they called them that.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we think the Tataviam called themselves Tataviam?
We do now, yes. We think the Tataviam name was what these people called themselves. And the reason why we say that is because the missionary at Mission San Fernando in 1804 recorded that in a letter that he wrote,
Mm-hmm.
calling these people from this area the Tataviam.
Right. The Chumash lived basically on the coast. Tataviam lived in the Santa Clarita Valley, and then I guess it was the Katanamuk who lived in the Antelope Valley. Who were some of the peoples that lived around here, within the since in the last 2,000 years?
Well, the the particular Chumash group that were neighbors of the Tataviam were the Ventureño Chumash Indians. And they spoke one of several languages today we collectively call Chumash. They're all linguistically related, but they are a language family rather than an individual language.
It's a separate family from the Uto-Aztecan.
Right. Chumash family of languages is completely unrelated to the Uto-Aztecan family of languages. And then other neighbors to the Tataviam were speakers of Uto-Aztecan languages. So the people of the Antelope Valley, which we also call Vanyame, were actually spoke a language that was only dialectically different from Katanamak, which was in the adjacent Tehachapi Mountains.
Right.
And then in the San Fernando Valley, that language we call Gaberlino, or sometimes today it's called Tongva.
Do we know roughly where the Tataviam lived, what the boundaries were?
Well, we have a pretty good idea. They were living at Camulos and Piru.
Down 126.
Yeah, down in Ventura County. And then they were living this whole side of the La Liebra Mountain. They also overlapped probably into the Antelope Valley at La Liebra, at the sort of the west end of the Antelope Valley. They went up Piru Creek to maybe about today where Hungry Valley is, on Los Padres Forest.
Right.
And then they went up to Soledad Canyon, up to Soledad Pass. And on the way to San Fernando, they went at least as far as probably the divide between Santa Clarita watershed and the canyons going into San Fernando Valley.
Right. What kind of archaeological discoveries have there been to tell us where their villages were?
Well, there's a lot we don't know about where particular villages were located. We have names of villages recorded in mission records that we know were in this area, but we haven't always been successful in identifying a precise archaeological location. We do have archaeological sites that are known, and some of them have been excavated.
Sure.
But those, by and large, are from earlier periods in time when we can't dig up the language of the people who lived in those villages. So we don't know whether they were Tataviam Indians or the predecessors to the Tataviam.
Have we found any of their major villages?
We know where the village of Piru, the name today, the town of Piru, gets its name from a Tataviam village called Piru.
Okay.
And that village, we know, was underneath the waters of Lake Piru
It's
today.
under Lake Piru now.
Yes.
Okay.
We also know there was a village pretty close to Magic Mountain called Tsawa-yung, or
Is that the name we slaughter and call Chiguaya Bit usually?
yes,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
it. The bit name ending also occurs in mission records, so it could be Tsawayabit or Tsawa-yung. Tsawa-yung means place of Tsawaya.
Okay.
And Tsawayabit means a person from Tsawaya. A bit ending means that's the place I'm from.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Other villages were where?
There was a village, a very prominent Tataviam village located about where Newhall is, that was called Tochananga. There was another village underneath the waters of Castaic Reservoir, Elderberry Canyon area, and that was called Pi'ing, or Pi'ivit, you know,
Okay.
I'm a person from Pi'i. There was a village up by La Liebra, and there was also a village where Camulos is. Now Camulos, Rancho Camulos, has a Chumash name. The Chumash name meant place of the juniper. There must have been a juniper tree there.
Okay.
But actually, the Tataviam name for that place was Quabamaki.
There was also a major village or something in the Agua Dulce area, wasn't there?
There was a major archaeological site, or is a major archaeological site, right there at Agua Dulce. And that is probably Well, it's debated which village that is. There are village names, as I've said, listed in the mission records for which we don't have good correlates of, archaeological locations. And there must have been village up Soledad Canyon too.
Right.
And we don't really know which was which.
Well, of course, there's always archaeological work going on. In fact, we went out to Acton recently, where there's a dig going on, and let's take a look at that now. We've come out to Aliso Canyon in Acton, where Professor Noble Eisenlauer and a team of archaeology students from L.A. Pierce College are digging for, well, why don't you tell us what you're finding out here?
Well, we're actually here looking for the remains of the Tataviam people. This is an area that they are presumed to have inhabited, and we have a large archaeological site here with quite a few remains, and we're just trying to identify them as Tataviam remains.
What kinds of things are you finding?
So far, we found both chipped and ground stone implements. We found projectile points of various types and sizes. We've found fragments of mortars, pestles, metates, some what look like cooking stones. We've also found some shell beads of several different styles, one glass bead, one stone bead.
Would they have been native to the area, or would they have been trade items?
Most likely they were trade items. Of course, the shell would have come from the coast, from groups like the Chumash. Either they produced the beads themselves and traded completed beads or strands of beads inland to these people, or the shell itself was brought from the coast and the beads were manufactured locally. We just don't know at this point.
Now, right behind us is a... what is this? Is this a home site or a burial site, or what is it?
This is excavation which was basically undertaken because we saw some fire affected rock on the surface, and in going down we found what looks like a platform of burnt rock, and it's not quite clear, but it's possible this is a roasting station of some sort, where perhaps seeds or yucca hearts would have been roasted. And adjacent to it is an occupation floor where there's hard compacted soil, so I'm not quite sure whether we have a hut adjacent to some sort of roasting feature or it's just hard compacted soil next to a roasting feature.
Now, how old are the things that you're finding?
Most of the things, and basically the age determination so far is based on the shell bead design and style. But we're looking at artifacts, I feel, that are no more recent than 500 or 600 years ago. In other words, about AD 500, 550 onward.
And that would have been about the time that the Tataviam arrived. So is that why you think that they're Tataviam as opposed to Katanamuk from the Antelope Valley or some other tribe?
Well, again, we have really no composite view of what Tataviam culture is. We have no list of diagnostic features that would separate, let's say, a Chumash village from a Tataviam village. You can look for certain features that are typically Chumash. We don't have a list of things that are typically Tataviam. That's another function of our long-term presence here in the forest, is to try to identify what features make up Tataviam culture prehistorically and in the early historic period.
Right, and you mentioned that you're in the National Forest here, working here under some kind of an agreement or something?
Very definitely. The forest has been kind enough to allow us to come out and hold our field school here. And basically, the reason we're here is to, of course, give students training, but also to monitor the archaeological sites that are out here, to periodically report on their condition, to stabilize areas that are being eroded, and basically be another set of eyes for the National Forest Service.
Great. Let's go take a look at one of these places where you're digging.
Sounds good.
Hi, now what's your name?
Leilani McDaniel.
Leilani, it looks like you found, what is that, an arrowhead?
Yes, it's a small point for hunting small rodents.
So somebody would have hunted squirrels with it, or what?
No, more like small birds and rats.
Have you found other things like this out here?
Yes, one other time we found one arrowhead.
How old would you say that? Do you have any way to know how old that is?
Not at the moment without further testing.
Well, we're along the banks of a dry creek, and is this where you're finding a lot of the artifacts?
This is actually a unit that we started last year. This is a 2 by 20 meter trench which cuts transversely or 90 degrees through the middle of an embankment that's running parallel to this creek. This embankment was put up by a local rancher with a bulldozer trying to divert some of the stream water to his ranch, and he inadvertently cut through some cultural material which is now piled in the upper reaches of this embankment. So we're excavating through it to get a sense of how the bank was built up and also what kind of cultural material, albeit disturbed, is here. And so far we found quite a lot of things. This is really giving us a much better picture of the day-to-day life of the people who lived here.
And this is where that projectile point that we just saw a minute ago came out of, right?
Exactly, and also a number of other points, at least 5 that have been found so far, and many shell beads, lots of carbonized seeds, some deer bone. We're getting a good feel for the subsistence behavior of the people who lived here, as well as their technological capabilities.
Very good. I guess seems there's always something going on, all new knowledge coming out of the ground.
Every day something new. That's what makes archaeology so exciting.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and let's go back to the studio. Now, you mentioned the introduction of the bow and arrow. I know that the implements that they used changed over time. What in the last 1,500, 2,000 years did these people hunt?
Well, we know from archaeological evidence that they were hunting rabbits, they were hunting deer, they're hunting antelope in the Antelope Valley. So they also were harvesting yucca and Joshua trees. When the new shoots would come up, they would harvest the shoots before they really got very big, and dig big roasting ovens and put them in with hot rocks and charcoal and cook the heart of the yucca, as a feast.
And there's still bedrock mortars that you find around the Santa Clarita Valley today. What would they have used those for?
The bedrock mortars were for acorns, which they would harvest in the fall, and then also store up, over the winter, continue to use them. We know, we've also found back in the mountains locations where they would cache acorns, kind of a storage locations.
And caves and that sort of thing.
Yeah, pine nuts were another important food.
Would those have been staples, like bread is to us today?
Yeah, acorn was definitely a staple. There's also a great variety of seeds that were gathered. And our grasslands have changed quite a bit with the coming of Europeans. A lot of our grasslands have changed over to European grasses and Mediterranean grasses. But when the Indians were here, there would have been a variety of seed-bearing crops that were where the seeds were harvested for food. It was like wild grain for them.
Well, with the arrival of the Europeans, Portola came through the Santa Clarita Valley in 1769. What happened to the Tataviam?
Well, Tataviam Indians began to be baptized at Mission San Fernando after it was established in 1797. And all of the Tataviam basically went to Mission San Fernando. A few went to San Gabriel before Mission San Fernando was established. But almost no Tataviam Indians went to San Buenaventura Mission because of the difference in language and culture.
So they all came under the umbrella of the Mission San Fernando, if you will. And
yes.
Basically intermarried with other tribes that were brought in from other areas?
That's right. Mission San Fernando, in its mission population, had speakers of 4 different Indian languages, which we've already talked about. And the Tataviam Indians there at Mission San Fernando intermarried with Chumash Indians, with Fernandino Indians, with Vanyame Indians.
Right.
And so today, people who are of Tataviam ancestry also have ancestry from San Fernando Valley and from the Antelope Valley, and some of them from the Chumash area.
Do we have any idea how many people have some Tataviam ancestry today, who are alive today?
Oh, several thousand, probably. There are different families that I've met and worked with on their family genealogies who we can trace back using the mission records to different Tataviam villages located in this area, in the city limits of Santa Clarita.
Do we have a good idea when these villages disappeared?
Most of the villages were completely abandoned by 1803. And but there were still some of the ones occupied. We still get people who are Tataviam coming to the mission as late as 1811.
Okay. What were these villages, what did they consist of? How many people lived in them? What were their houses like?
We suspect that the houses were very much like Chumash Indian houses. They would be domed houses, quite spacious inside actually. The frame would be built of willow or sycamore, and then be thatched with tule or cattail. And the number of people in each village varied. The larger villages probably would have several hundred, but the smaller ones might be just a few families.
What was their hierarchical structure like? Was there a division of labor?
Yes, there were chiefs. The chiefs are actually named and mentioned in mission records. Chief of Piru, for example. And if the Tataviam are like other neighboring groups, they probably had what we call patrilineal social organization. That is, that your membership in your clan was based on your father's lineage.
Okay. Was there one major overlord of the Tataviam realm?
Probably each village was its own tribe. People would come together from the different villages for ceremonies and maybe consultation for political reasons, but each village was independent.
Right. Well, we could go on forever, but we can't. So thank you for joining us. And for answers to your SCV history questions, visit scvhistory.com on the internet or stop by the Saugus train station in downtown Newhall, weekends 1 to 4. We've got some Tataviam artifacts on display there. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History. I'm Leon Warden. Good night.